Hello, everyone. I want to talk about tennis today. You were probably thinking, I bet that's what Ed's going to talk about on day 9. Yeah, this is day 9 of my 30 days in a row of live stream. And I'm kind of a tennis nerd. I love this time of year because the US Open is on from New York City. And it's always an amazing display of athletic talent and competition and drama. Like, can Djokovic come from behind at the age of 38? I think he's 38 this year. Coco Gauff, a phenomenal young American player, is just 21 years old, highly regarded as a generational talent. She's did she win last year? I think she won last year. Anyway, she's in the competition and is expected to do very well. But interestingly enough, she has chosen about a week before the tournament began to fire one of her coaches and hire a new coach. Now that's kind of a risky move in the sense that you'd think you want some stability, some just sort of routine going in terms of your pattern and what you do as a player to prepare for a big event like this. It's the last Grand Slam tennis tournament of the year. Some of you are like, whatever, are you going to talk about music? Well, eventually I am, hang in there. But Coco's decision to hire this new coach has been an inspiration to me and got me really thinking about what I do as a musician and really many areas of life that could be impacted by a change like hiring a new coach. All right, that's kind of the premise. The thing about the serve is when you strike the ball and begin a point, the serve is the motion that makes that happen. And those of you who, whatever, I'll just keep with my crude description of a serve. So you hit the ball and you want to hit it really hard. And like Serena Williams, you want to be able to place it different places on the court and have top spin or whatever and do amazing angles. Oh, I'll take a deep breath and proceed. So Coco hired a new coach. And even last night in her first round match, the commentators were saying, well, this is going to be interesting, hiring the new coach, how's she going to do? And it turned out you could definitely see evidence, even though it's only been a few days working with the new coach, that her serving motion is improving. She had struggled with a lot of double faults in the last several months, and this choice to work with a coach already seems to be paying off dividends. Who knows how far she'll get through the tournament, but for the future and long term in her career, this choice to have a different coach, he's called a biomechanics expert, amazing term, but relevant. How in the world does that relate to what you or I might do as instrumentalist? I'm a keyboard player, and I want to show you a score this is a score for a piece I've written, and it's got several instances of it where finesse or attention to detail really matters. And that biomechanics coach working with Coco is helping her with the ball toss, with all kinds of particulars of that serve motion in her game. Well, as musicians, there are lots of levels of detail we could go to as we work on, in this case, a solo piano piece I've written, or it might be a worship song you're working on where you're thinking, what can we do to make that moment before the bridge significant? So when the bridge begins, we can come way down dynamically and then build as the repeat of the bridge happens and build again as that repeats again. And then what do we want to do to make that last chorus a big climax? Well, those elements I would say represent finesse musically. Now let me show you a few things about this piece and we'll talk about finesse in terms of piano playing. First of all, I had a couple of thoughts as my microphone falls off about what we could apply finesse to. Now, if you're not familiar with the piano and what a sustain pedal is, I'll just give you a quick glimpse of what it is. Under the keyboard, if you've watched many people on stage or on a worship in a band on stage, you'll always see a pedal of some sort under the instrument. The pedal allows, among other things, to sustain pitches. Now I'll just hold a note down, and now I've lifted my hand. Let me get this keyboard where you can see it. Yeah, I've lifted my hands aren't on the keyboard, but you still hear the note. that note is being heard because the pedal's being held. Now I'll strike it again and I'll let the pedal off and you can hear it stop. In fact, you might even hear it click. But the sustain pedal is an important part of the expression of creating expressive music. So I want to play the first couple of lines of this piece, and then I'm going to show you some details about what the sustain pedal can do. Now, I'll also mention how you can be conscious of the finesse of your tone producing melodies, as you see on the screen, or playing counter melodies. Like I said, we're going a little deeper than I might normally go here, but yeah, I'll attribute that to Coco Gauff and her inspiration. Seriously. All right, so here's the first line of the piece, and I'll stop talking. I'll take a deep breath and slow down. Here we go. Turn the keys up just a little bit. All right, so the very first measure in the right hand, I have an E to an F. And if I hold my pedal down, here's the E to the F without the pedal down. Now here's with the pedal. You can hear the E kind of ringing. It sort of creates this chopsticks dissonance. Now dissonance, in many cases, is regarded as something you absolutely don't want. But I, as a composer, enjoy the color dissonance can bring to a moment in a piece. So I'm going to let my sustain pedal sustain, hold a little longer than I might normally. And here's that first measure again. Now you can hear both. And now I will say, as I do this live for you, this is part of the joy of making live music. Every time you play it, your expression might be slightly different. I, as a performer, might be thinking, oh man, I wish I hadn't hit that E so hard, or other things like that could happen. But that's some of what I love about music, and the fact that each time we watch a performance or listen to a live recording, we're hearing what someone played there right on the spot. So here's a little bit more with the sustain pedal involved. Second line. So that's enough. You heard a few examples of the sustain pedal. Now I won't get too detailed because I want to get to the other examples in my list and show you a few more things about the finesse that we can achieve or work toward as musicians. Second point I wanted to make, excuse me, is about producing rich tone as a pianist. So this is a virtual instrument I'm playing. This is not a real piano. It's not a Yamaha or a Steinway or a Bösendorfer sitting in my little recording studio here. It's a Yamaha CP88, and I'm using software called Alicia's Keys from Native Instruments that's got in fact, it's a Yamaha keyboard that was sampled, but that's a long explanation of that, but it's not a real piano. But it is capable of being played with great expression. So I'll just play a little more of this first line. Now, that first statement of the melody, I might want to play my second measure with a little more tone because it's the same E, F, but instead of eighth quarter, the second measure is dotted eighth, dotted eighth. Super subtle difference, but I'll try to show you with my tone that I can make that measure unique. Here we go. I think I've made my point. Well, I'm going to proceed as though I have. Oh my gosh. Now, the third point I have here as a bullet point is the thought of counter melodies. If you would respond in the comments, you might tell me what a counter melody is. In the study of Bach's music, a great Baroque composer, we often talk about contrapuntal movement, which is like the sopranos singing a line and then the altos answering with a different kind of movement under them. It's incredible the craft that we can hear in classical composers, but It's also incredible what we hear in modern productions, pop or jazz or modern worship productions. The skill that arrangers are bringing and instrumentalists are bringing to these arrangements to create beautiful guitar lines that complement the vocal that's being sung, or a string arrangement where the cello and the violas and the violins all move in beautiful interweaving melodies. Amazing. Now let's look at the second line of the piece, and you'll see. Yes. Yep. Second line. Here we go. Now that's a subtle example, and I wish I had it circled on the screen, but basically in the left hand I go. So we hear contrary motion, and that's getting very detailed. I'm going to move on. So the next thing I'm going to show you about finesse in music, and to take a deep breath and slow down. Anybody talk fast who's watching me? Oh man, it's all good, right? Okay, so I'm going to talk about rubato. And that's interesting timing that I talk about rubato as I talk about talking too fast. Time on a recording can have a sense of being like this. Very metronomic. In fact, that sound could be described as a metronome. That click, 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 many of us trained as young musicians playing with. Time is our friend in the sense that when it's a song that has a great groove to it and we want it to just feel like utterly solid, there might be a little bit of playing ahead or behind of the beat. That's not necessarily where I want to go right now. But time can be fluid. Time doesn't have to be strict, where once we start, tick, 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 it continues that way. So what I want to do this time as I play this piece, you see the two areas I've outlined in red. At the top right, you'll see the phrase rubato or relaxed. And then below that, at the second line, it says a tempo or steady tempo returns. So I'm going to play the whole thing, these first two lines again, and you'll see what I mean by that relaxed tempo. Back to time. Yes, so time is something we can play with. And what I love about this as a performer, and if you're a solo performer, or if you in your church worship team or in your ensemble, wherever you're playing, if you have moments in your set or your program where you can have some of this flexible tempo, I believe one of the beautiful things can be communicated there is humanity and the importance of breathing sometimes and not hurrying on to the next thing. Now, I might be overstating the value of rubato and a tempo. I don't think so. As a worship minister, especially, if I can create a moment before we sing where there's this bit of, now we sing together, that can be a really powerful thing. So let's move on here. A couple of other things I want to show you. In classical music and in jazz charts or a lot of different types of notated music, you might see something that's called a caesura. Let me show you something here. Now, did you see that? I used a tennis ball to bring that graphic onto the screen. Now, so what I'm learning as I go live here day after day is that just because I can have a tennis ball come onto the screen doesn't mean I have to, but I thought, well, I love Coco Gauff, I love watching tennis, I'm gonna go for it. So I went for it, there you go. So a caesura, I hope I'm pronouncing that, it's an Italian word. It literally means to pause. And in terms of music, if my pulse has been, let's see here, yes, the railroad tracks indicate that time is going to stop. not just a slight rubato and then quickly, well, then move to the next a tempo moment. But what I want to do here, did I circle this? Yes. Here you can see two spots in my score where there's a caesura. You can see the little two diagonal lines coming. I hope you can see those in the top red area. So let me play the top line of the score, and then when I get to the bottom, I'll make a very definite pause. And then, speaking of time coming back, that rubato feel, time literally, I call it falling apart. And then it picks up again, and that waltz kind of 6/8 feeling comes back. So let's go from the top of the page. There's some counter melodies. So that's caesura, time stops. And it may, as a guy who plays on worship teams a lot, it may think, might feel, as I stutter, it might feel like a real challenge to what you normally do to think, well, I don't think that would fit our context. But I think if you would try it, I'm not saying you need to do it once every quarter, but just consider some of these elements, because when you consider that a lot of our productions now are very clock driven, they're very synced with a ticking of some sort, metronome, and that element of pausing for a moment could be a delight. I'll just leave it there. I absolutely believe that. And now let me play you can see at the bottom of the score here, I've, on the next to last line, this is kind of the big climax of the piece. And you can see that there's those train tracks or the caesura marks at the end of that in the second red box on the page. So I'm going to play this line and then into the piece, and you'll see what caesura can bring to a moment musically. So now I'm going to start again. Speaking of finesse, and I'll happily admit this, I haven't recorded this piece yet because I want to be absolutely sure that I have my muscle memory of all these kind of intricate parts of the piece I've written. I want them absolutely secure in my fingers. And just like Coco Gauff working on her serve and trying to toss the ball a little differently or whatever she might need to change, I want to figure out what is making me not quite sure about this or that part of my score. So I will say that with vulnerability and say that's why it's not recorded yet. But it doesn't mean don't make steps to getting it ready to record. Practice, work on hard stuff, work on things that currently challenge you. And it's a miracle from God that muscle memory does improve, and soon we're not even thinking. And it's amazing to me that music can be so expressive as we spend the time mechanically practicing with different rhythms and different techniques to really get it in our fingers. There you go, amazing. So. Now I almost talked over that caesura there. The next to the, oh, I just got a thumbs up from somebody. Let me check. Now, I think we're all friends here, but I'm gonna do something that I hadn't planned on. I'm gonna look for my comments window and do something fun. Oh my gosh, look at this. I have some comments. I've got to, bear with me here, guys. Does it show? Okay. Hang in there. Hang in there. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to make this work. Overlays, placeholder, comment overlay. That'll do. Okay. Now this, you may think, good grief, Ed, you're such a nerd. But I'm happy with whatever. There it is. Now, well, you can't quite read it, but I'm going to pull it up. Hey, Gretchen, so nice to see you. How fun. So, Caesura, and that comment will go away in a moment. Eric said, love the piece a lot. That's so kind. Thank you so much. All right, so Caesura. Now, let me nerd out a little bit more here with the very last line of the piece. I mentioned that live music is very vulnerable. And in that, because of it, I think really rewarding to hear, because we know we're generally listening to someone who's being very careful with what they craft at their instrument. So in this piece, after the final caesura that you see there, I have just this right hand with an octave, very high, and then the left hand is playing the motif or the theme from the very first measure of the piece, that E, F motif. Now, so the last statement from the piano on that last line is very dissonant. So the way I strike these keys is an important moment. So first of all, I don't want to hit an A up top with I want to play an octave G. So, and I intentionally am letting my pedals stay muddy or held so that I hear this. Now, how hard I strike the F, some of you are thinking, dude, you are way too focused on this stuff. But this is music making. This is the finesse, the intricacy of making music that is, I don't know, well thought out or whatever. So here's the E, F, and I'll let that ring, and then state that lower tone. Now my pedal has never been raised after I struck this. So that's that. Oh my goodness, that was fun. And I'm going to take a chance and go to this page. Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I love this. Thank you for comments, for Gretchen and Eric. What a joy. And thank you for this opportunity to share. And as I close here, I want to say that the last thing you'll hear as the live stream ends will be a little bit of me playing the first phrase of the piece here. And yeah, so I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for your comments, friends. God bless.